Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome again to our session on the history of the church in Mongolia. For those of you who weren't here yesterday, I'm Brother Filipe Chou.
And I'm Sister Petra Chou.
Now, in Mongolia, they go by first name instead of last names. So here in the U.S., in the Western world, we would say Brother Chou and Sister Chou. But in Mongolia, they would go Brother Chou, Brother Filipe, and Sister Petra. Okay, so yesterday we talked about the first missionaries who arrived in Mongolia. Today we're going to be talking about the Mongolian mission, the first missionaries there, missionary work, and then the church educational system, or the seminaries and institutes.
As we talked about yesterday, there were 6 senior couples were first sent to Mongolia. And then after that, the 6 young elders were sent to Mongolia and then added to the 12 elders as well.
And so, as we mentioned yesterday, we had the first church meetings were held in the missionaries' apartment. And when it outgrew that, then they went to the state library. The state library is where they held meetings for a little season. And then after that, they found a new location, which is the Peace and Friendship Palace, which is a very famous location in Mongolia. Most of the people in Mongolia would be familiar with this Peace and Friendship Palace. And so here's a picture of this place where the church began to hold meetings.
And then not only holding meetings, they have other functions also was held in this Peace and Friendship Palace as well. And then it's a gathering place for the Singhs in Mongolia.
And then as the missionaries are finishing their mission, then the first missionary couples are going home, then they have to reorganize the branch presidency as well. As we talk about the Mongolia, we want to talk about the important story here that helped pave the way for religious freedom.
And not only the priestly leader are important in the history, some of the sisters are also important in the Mongolian history of the church. And one of the examples is Sister Oyun. And she is a faithful member of the church. And because of her, she paved the way for the freedom of religion in Mongolia as well.
And this is even before she was a member of the church, right?
Yeah.
Because she didn't know anything about the church, but she worked at the library where the church was holding meetings.
And then one time, she was like on Sunday, she heard people singing hymns, and she didn't know what was that. And she was so curious, so she came inside to see one of the church meeting of the church. And after that, and she met with the missionaries, and then she joined the church a little bit later on.
And she worked in the library during the week, and it just happened that she had to pick up something on the weekend when the library was closed, and walked in and heard this singing, these beautiful hymns. And then when she went and explored to find out what was going on, she found these wonderful missionaries with great smiles that just welcomed her in, and she just loved, and then later joined the church. She even brought her son one time.
Yes, the son at that time wasn't interested at that point, but later on, her son actually joined the church, and he became the first stake president in Mongolia, and he also still worked for the seminary institute system in Mongolia nowadays. And then her story was so important, and then we're going to read a little bit more detail in her stories. And her story was highlighted by Elder Darlene H. Oaks in the BYU Idaho devotional.
Mm-hmm. So here's Elder Oaks. And as you know, our prophets and apostles have been traveling the world to promote religious freedom. But here he shares, several years ago, President Oaks shared this story about Sister Oyun. Okay, now recall that the Mongolia was a Soviet satellite country, and the Soviets has just finished
and there was also mostly communist, and then there's no such religion freedom at that time.
Right. So Mongolia had become an independent country, and they were reorganized the government, and there was a debate on what should be included in the constitution for them. and about free speech and freedom of religion and so forth. And so here's from then Elder Oak's account at BYU, Idaho. He says, in that precarious environment, a 42-year-old married woman, Oyun Altagaro, a department head in the state library, courageously took some action that would prove historic. Acting against official pressure, she organized a Democratic Association branch council. This 12-member group, the first of its kind, spoke out for democracy and proposed that the state employees have the freedom of worship, belief, and expression, including the right to belong to a political party of their choice. When Oyun and others were fired from their state employment, Oyun began a hunger strike in the state library. And then within 3 hours, she was joined by 20 others, mostly women, and their hunger strike, which continued for 5 days, became a public demonstration that took their grievances to the people of Mongolia. Yeah, even before she was a member of the church, she had fasted, in this case, fasting for 5 days, right, during this hunger strike. President Oaks continues, this demonstration, backed by major Democratic movement leaders, encouraged other government employees to organize similar democratic councils. These dangerous actions expanded into national anti-government movement that voiced powerful support for the basic human freedom of speech, press, and religion. Eventually, the government accepted the demands, and in the adoption of a democratic constitution 2 years later, Mongolia took a major step forward towards a free society. And so Sister Ayun's work was so very important.
And sometimes when we talk about history, people maybe have a negative connotation. The thought about it's so boring, but not spiritual history. And also you can see how the Lord plays in different people's hand to put this great work together. This is a great movement for the Mongolia things that the people at that time. And then because they fight for religious freedom, that paved the way to set up a great foundation of the gospel of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Mongolia later on as well.
So now the church is officially registered in Mongolia, right?
Yes. But sometimes, so in some foreign country, trying to get the church registered can be a challenge as well.
But the Asia Area Presidency will travel and maintain relationship with government officials. And then finally, the church was officially registered in Mongolia on the 24th of October 1994. And then a month later, in November 1994, it was officially recognized as a church entity.
Yeah, but there's some challenges that come later on as well. We are going to read a little bit excerpt from Elder Grover, how at that time he was in the Asia Area Presidency, and there were challenges about challenges, and then how he and his daughter resolved this visa crisis. And at that time, even though the church was registered in Mongolia, but they have a hard time giving out visa. At one point, that they didn't want to issue any visa for the missionaries at that time.
Yeah, so this is in 1994, right? Elder Grover, John H. Grover, and most of you may know him from the movie The Other Side of Heaven, his experience in the Pacific. Much less known is about his role here in Mongolia to secure permission for missionaries to be in Mongolia. So I'll read from you here. Again, this is 1994. Elder John H. Grover, then a member of the Asia Area Presidency, was assigned by the Asia Area Presidency to oversee the church efforts in Mongolia. And so this crisis, this visa crisis, fell on his lap when a government official in Mongolia determined to not allow any more visas for these missionaries. And so all of a sudden, Elder Grover was preparing to fly to Mongolia to try to figure out what can we do, right? Because without those visas, the missionaries would be kicked out of Mongolia. So this is from his journal. He says, our daughter, Jeanine Marie, had recently finished her mission in Slovenia, and was visiting us in Hong Kong before returning to school at BYU. We quickly made arrangements for Jean, Janine, and myself to go to Mongolia. You can imagine our heavy hearts as well as our fervent prayers as we undertook this assignment. Relying on the Lord, we flew to Mongolia to do all we could to solve the problem. We met with a few members we had in Ulaanbaatar and found that the situation was even more serious than we had understood. Having been under Russian communist domination for 70 years, many government officials were still steeped in the old ways and found it difficult to change their hearts and minds. We took some local church leaders and met with the man who had made the decision to terminate the visas. He seemed cold and determined to stick to his decision. For several days, we held meetings with every official who would meet with us. We hit a dead end every time. And so in this precarious times, Elder Grover relates how they prayed together with the leaders, they tried everything. And then he continues here, almost as an afterthought. Elder Grover says he thought about the ambassador.
I think Elder Grover at that time must be inspired to bring his daughter on this trip. And his daughter actually plays a great effort in resolving this visa crisis.
Yeah, so they decided that they were going to meet with the ambassador, who was in the process of leaving to go to Europe, right? The ambassador in Mongolia had a different new assignment, and he was going to be departing just in a few days to go to Europe. And it happens that he was assigned to the country of Slovenia, where Elder Grover's daughter had just finished her mission. Okay? So as the ambassador mentioned this and said, I don't have any more time to meet. I'm anxious because I need to get ready to leave, and I don't know anything about this country I'm going to be serving at. And so when Elder Grover hears this, he says, "Really? You're going to Slovenia?" Elder Grover responded, "I have a daughter with me who just returned from there, where she served as a missionary for our church for the last 18 months. Maybe she could answer some of your questions." And so Jeannie Grover met with the ambassador. They spent a little bit of time together. She talked to him about the culture, the people, the language. And the ambassador was very, very impressed, that this girl would know so much. It was better than some of the briefings that he would be able to receive from the embassy. And at the end of the meeting, the ambassador said, quote, "There is one person I could introduce you to who just might be able to help you with your visa challenge." And that key connection made all the difference. Elder Grover said, quote, "The thin thread of hope began to thicken and to hold. In the end, the visas continued to be issued and the church continued to grow under the guidance of the Lord's outstretched arm. That particular problem was solved."
I can see the powerful missionary work from these young missionaries. And when they were called, they were mighty servant of the Lord. They didn't know how much that they can prepare themselves to serve the Lord, even in the country that you serve, or maybe like Jean. And then she also helped to settle this issue in Mongolia and help bring more missionary and keep helping to preach the gospel in Mongolia in that way.
Yeah, and so I guess some people would say, "Wow, what a wonderful coincidence," right? Except we would say, no, it's not a coincidence. It's the Lord's divine hand that provided for those divine appointments, right? It's not by chance that Elder Grover was assigned to the area presidency and assigned over Mongolia. It's not by chance that his daughter was assigned to Slovenia, where she would learn the culture, the language, and fall in love with those people. It's not a coincidence that the ambassador that they talked to was being assigned or reassigned to go to that same country, and that Elder Grover would think about bringing his daughter along on this trip. So none of that is by chance, not by coincidence. The Lord is orchestrated all of that, and we see the hand of God in that. Elder Sam Wong said that the Lord is in the details of the details of the details of your life. And here we see how He's in the details of the details of the details of resolving this visa crisis at this time by putting the right persons in the right place with the right background and experiences that would provide a way for the visa crisis to be resolved and allowing the missionaries to continue to serve in Mongolia.
And also, Song conferences also was held in Mongolia. And then you can see the picture on the left. The Song conference in Ulaanbaatar was held in the fall 1994. And then you can see Sister Hardy and brother and sister Dai, and then Elder Hardy as well, and then Elder Cook, Sister Cook, and Elder and Sister Cox, and Sister Bennett, and Elder John Bennett as well. And then as the membership has grown in Mongolia, at the same time, so the members need some transportation to go to church. So you can see the pictures on the right side that sometimes they rent a truck and then put all these members into the truck. They shuttle them into the chapel and then to worship the Lord that way.
And I love this picture on the right because they're renting these military trucks to transport members for baptismal service at a sports club arena, right? So that they can found a swimming pool, right? So be able to have these baptisms. And on this next slide here, on the left, you will see a group of missionaries with a group of individuals that they've been teaching that are getting prepared to be baptized. And this was very typical, where it wasn't one or two baptisms, there's a group of people that would be getting baptized.
Yes, and at that time, around the same time, like 93 to 95, I was a young missionaries in Hong Kong. I often remember in our Song conference, Elder Carmack or like Elder Groberg talk about the missionary work in Mongolia. It was just like a flooding the gospel. Everyone was hungry for the gospel. Lots of people joined the church, and then they introduced the church to their dear family and friends and relatives. So a lot of people got baptized during that period of time.
And on this picture on the right, you see the first 12 young missionary elders during Christmas. That is something that they celebrated and introduced many of the Mongolians to the Christmas pageant and to remember the birth of the Savior. You see here on this picture, one of the missionaries dressed as Santa, and then the others, many of them dressed in traditional Mongolia attire.
Okay, and then with the church keep spreading and then multiplying, and then two branches was established in Ulaanbaatar, Salpi and Huo branches, and then they were divided on May 7, 1995.
And they included the first Mongolian branch presidents. Batuzi, that we talked about, was one of the first two converts to the church. He became the branch president for the Tool branch. And then Brother Engtovishin became the president of the Selby branch. He is the one that was baptized in Germany and then came back and then baptized his wife and 3 of his 5 children who were old enough to be baptized. The first Mongolian family, if you will.
Yeah, the first Mongolian family. So they were very famous in Mongolian history. Okay, with the missionary keep flourishing in Mongolia, so it was time to call the mission president as well. So the Mongolian Ulaanbaatar mission was opened on July 1st, 1995. And then it was Elder Cook and Sister President Richard Cook, and he was serving they were the missionary couples at that before that, and then after that he was called to be the mission president in Mongolia, and later on he was in a quorum of 70 in the Asia area presidency as well.
And his wife, Mary Cook, became the mission president's. She was the mission president's companion, and many of you may know that she was also a former counselor in the General Young Women Presidency of the church. And then together, they presided over as the first mission president and companion for the Mongolia Ulaanbaatar mission, beginning in 1995.
And President Richard Cook, his work, he has done a lot of work in Mongolia, and also he has done a lot of work in the Asia area as well. And when we were, because of his effort, the early morning seminary program was established in Taiwan after a struggle to establish for a long time. And he is a go-getter when things that need to be done, when the Lord needs him to get something done, he will get it done no matter what. And I have great admire for them, for their effort and for the sacrifice that they serve as a mission president in Mongolia.
Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, Elder and Sister Cook were a couple missionaries in Mongolia. And then while they were living in Mongolia and serving a mission, President Gordon B. Hinckley called them and woke them up about 5 a.m. And that, of course, completely changed their life. They were asked to fly to Utah to receive some training. And then they returned to Mongolia to organize and preside over the first mission in Mongolia. President Hinckley, as they met, visited with them in Salt Lake, and to set them apart, said, "Go forward with faith. The Lord is in charge." And so as they come back then, it was Elder Burrell had joined Elder Maxwell in the Quorum of 12 to set apart President Sister Cook. And then Elder Burrell said, "We now have a Mongolian Ulaanbaatar mission. So that's no longer part of the Asia International Mission." No, so the missionaries didn't report directly to the Asia Area Presidency anymore. The missionaries would report to the mission president in Mongolia, and he would report to the Asia Area Presidency. And so this comes from mission records. July 1st, 1995, the Mongolian Ulaanbaatar mission was officially formed. President Richard R. Cook is the first mission president. 12 young missionaries are here at this time, 10 in Ulaanbaatar and 2 in Erdonant. At this time, there are also 4 senior couples, Elder and Sister Hardy, Elder and Sister Bennett, Elder and Sister Brown, and Elder and Sister Cox. Okay? And so that's how the Ulaanbaatar mission started.
And you can see the pictures on the left, and you can see Elder Cook is in a gird in one of the provinces in Mongolia in July 1994. He was with some Mongolian kids in the gird area. And on the right side, you can see the local church leader were called to serve as the branch president. You can see in the right middle too. We talk about the first branch president in the at that time in that area.
Yeah, so I love that picture because it shows President Sister Cook there with the first 2 local leaders to serve as branch presidents. And then, of course, there's another missionary couple there in this picture there. But missionary work was not without challenges, and many of the new converts were persecuted. They suffered many persecutions for joining a Christian church. Some of them lost employment for joining the church. Some of them lost their friends. And there are, of course, other difficulties, finding places to gather for church meetings, as well as places to baptize new converts. Some had to walk great distances to be able to find a place to be baptized. Let me share with you just one story here. This is from July 14, 1995, from Sister Minjin. She says, "I was finally baptized after being forcefully taken from the baptismal place in her white clothes by members of another church at the last baptism." Right? So when she was trying to be baptized, members from the other church from the other Christian faith, tried to pull her out of the pool, get her out so she couldn't get baptized. But she would persevere, came back again, and was finally baptized. So there was some challenges for many of the members, but also great blessings.
And then when we talk about the mission, we have to mention this brother, Backbow.
Yeah, I love this story from Brother Batbold. He becomes the mission president's chauffeur, mission president's driver.
When he was, when President Richard Cook came to Mongolia, he needs someone to drive him because at that time there's no GPS.
No smartphones.
I bet they didn't have any road map as well because in Mongolia at that time. So in order for him to travel places, he has to have someone that with experience, know the road, know the culture to take him around. And then actually this story we just share with Sister Cook this morning when she told us about him. And then they were at the airport, they're trying to find a ride to go to the mission home at that time.
And this is when they're returning from Salt Lake now as the mission president and companion.
Yes, they were like out on the road. You know, at that time, you can just say wave like that in Mongolia. Every car can be a Uber to you.
Yeah.
But President Cook at that time keep watching, this car going back and forth, back and forth. In his mind, he said, we need a bigger car. We prefer to have a van to take us to the mission home. So he keep watching, and then all of a sudden he just wait. And this brother Batbold stopped. And then President Cook extended, will you take us a ride? Give us a ride. And then he thought, maybe. Let me ask. This is not my car. It's my family's, relatives' car. Let me ask for permission. And then they were able to. Their relatives said yes. I could take you around. And then he was able to be President Cook chauffeur for a little bit for at least how many weeks?
It started for a day, and then it was a week, and then a month, and then before you knew it, he ended up driving for 23 years, starting with President Cook, and then all the subsequent, every single mission president after that for the next 23 years. Brother Batbold became the mission president's driver, chauffeur.
I think when he was stopped at the first time, he didn't know that one Uber service is turned into a lifelong career for him. And then we met him in 2018. He was a very humble man. And then at the beginning, he was a member of the church because of his services with all these mission presidents. And then he became a member of the church. And then he later served as also stake presidency as well.
Yeah, served both in the mission presidency and the stake presidency. And what a great story. Brother Batbold here, just, out of the sudden, some stranger knocks at the window of his car and then, or his relative's car that he was driving. And now, years later, great stories that he has for many of those missionaries. He didn't have a GPS there, but I guess in his head, he had the GPS up there, and he knew where to take the mission presidents to all their meetings, to meet with the missionaries, to all the chapels, and so forth.
He has a human GPS. Sometimes, Mongolia is still a big country, so he has to drive for maybe 10 hours to go to Darham and, a long time as well. But as we said before, this is not a coincidence. This is a divine, hands, from the Lord, that because of him, he was able to serve the mission presidency. And then he was also able to join the church as well.
Yeah, I loved what Brother Batbold says here about the 11 mission presidents that he drove, and this is in 2018. I drove the mission presidents many times to the countryside to visit the chapels. I had a GPS in my head, and although I grew up in the city, I traveled to the countryside too. My longest trip was 1,500 kilometers one way, or 3,000 kilometers round trip, to take the mission president to visit 2 distant branch conferences each year. We will go from Ulaanbaatar to Murung, and from Murung to Hov. When President Cook was here, we would drive 2 or 3 days or more. They would be tired, and his wife would sleep in the back seat. The road was not paved then, and it was a dirt and bumpy road. Now the road is paved, at least part of the way, so it takes us about 10 to 11 hours to Murung, and about a day and a half to Hov, or 2 days from Ulaanbaatar to Hov. Right? So this is after the roads are paved. And then before it was paved, then, it was really, especially during the rainy season, it was just mud roads. And sometimes they get stuck.
Yeah, you can see the pictures here that the truck was stuck, and at that time probably they don't have AAA to rescue you, so they have to use their brain and power, and then manpower to pull the car out from this ditch and then keep going on. And you can see the sacrifice of all these mission presidents, and all these members that they were trying their best to travel in a dirt road to go to a very remote area to deliver a conference to these faithful members of the saints and the saints as well.
And so the church really concentrated on the early efforts in UB, in Ulaanbaatar, the capital. So that's where most of the missionary work was happening. But now it was time to stretch out to the other cities, and there's several of them, but we're going to touch on Ernet and Darkham, okay, which is about 10 hours away from Ulaanbaatar on a paved road. And so before those paved roads, those mud roads, those dirt roads, they would have to camp somewhere in between on their way.
And then they are north of UB. So when they are stuck, they probably have to camp on the side until they are unstuck before they can keep going. Okay, this first area beyond UB to have the missionaries in it was Ernet, and that was the second city to open the missionary work. And Elder Birch and then Elder Roger are the first missionaries there.
Yeah, and then they also had the first baptism in Ernet, a sister called by the name of Dinah, and she was actually from Darkham, but was in Ernet, working and going to school, and met the missionaries and joined the church there. Her family, of course, shunned her, right, because they were against her joining the church.
And then also the first sacrament meeting was also held in Ernet.
And so now Dinah has to go back, right? After spending some time in Ernet, she and the missionaries now that are establishing the church there in Ernet, Dinah goes back to Darkham, where she is from, and sends a letter to the mission president requesting missionaries. In her letter, she says, please send some missionaries to Darkham.
And then the area was opened in March 1996.
Mm-hmm. And so here I'm going to read a little to you from Dinah's journal. Okay? She says, I remember the first time when I had 3 discussions. I didn't like it at all. I thought, oh, you're lying. I don't believe that we should believe in Christ. Everybody should believe in God, but not this one. But then they talked about the first vision of Joseph Smith, and that made an impression. I thought, oh, this man, he was so faithful, and he was so willing to serve God and his son. He saw him. I thought, everybody can see God if we will be faithful like him. I liked that part, but I didn't like the other part. They tried to share their testimony, and they said that they are not forcing that I should believe in this, but they said, this is your choice. So they left, and I said, it's finished. It's over. I don't want to hear anything because it made me afraid. But then she said that while she was afraid, she heard the Lord say to her, you are wrong. And so that just stopped her in her tracks, right? She had stopped listening to the lessons, but this feeling just kept coming and coming to her heart. And these words, you are wrong. And so she eventually said, I felt that I was wrong. I am sorry. And this is, she runs into the missionaries again after she had stopped lessons with them. She runs into them in the street and she tells them, I feel that I'm wrong. I'm sorry. Can I take the discussions again? When I started taking the discussions, I just felt the Spirit. And then, of course, she was baptized and became a faithful and strong member of the church in Ernet and then back in Darkham.
And then also other people also joined the church. The first baptism in Durham was Doversurin, and then got baptized on April 28, 1996. But also, there's also challenges. The church at that time was registered in Mongolia. But doesn't mean in every city was recognized or registered this kind of registration. So there's at that time a registration challenges over there. The city refused to register the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at that city of Durham.
So the church keeps bumping into that in Mongolia, right? It's registered, but then it goes to a city and they say, well, you also have to register here, right? And so the church works through that, through much prayer, too much effort by the missionaries, by the members, and then they're able to register. In Ernant, they have their first sacrament meeting here in a hotel, right? It's called the Selengi. And it was the Selengi Hotel where, here, let me read to you a little bit here. It says the people used to go there. This is the Selengi Hotel. It's kind of a training center. It's almost the very first building when you go to Ernant. In this place, we had sacrament meeting. We had a few members, like 8 and 6, maybe like 16 members later. Elder Birch, he had finished his mission, was gone. Elder Roger and Elder Hawkins were conducting the sacrament meeting. When we went to partake of the sacrament, I can't tell you the very first impression, but I think it was just very nice. There were a few people, and they were all smiling because we knew those elders and we knew that we believe in God. And Dinah one day thought, oh, I can't go to church because of my family. And then the missionary said, well, it's important that you go to church to attend sacrament meeting and partake the sacrament every week. And so she said, she asked the missionaries, can you just cancel the sacrament meeting because I can't come? Because it's just going to be the missionaries and me on this Sunday. And so here's the missionaries' response. They said, oh, we don't have the right to cancel it, right? This is, the Lord has established that every week we come to church and have a sacrament meeting in remembrance of the Savior and his sacrifice. And so Dana said, wow, that just really impressed me. Honestly, she said, she just felt like that's how important it is for me to be at church. They told me, there is a God. He is waiting for you. And even if there are only a few members, it doesn't matter because he is still waiting for you. And Dina thought, oh, it is so important for me to come. And so she continued to come, attend church, both at Ernant and then later when the missionaries were sent to Darkham and the branch was established there, she would continue to attend. For some of them, and I love this other part, and that comes from Elder Alsop's journal. He said, we left Ernant on a road that at one time had been paved, or parts of it, but was badly broken, not nearly as good as the gravel roads to Selengi. We covered the first 20 miles in an hour, and then 15 minutes, and 240 miles with 240 miles left to go. Fortunately, it got better. We made to Darkham after 4 hours, and the paved road the rest of the way to Ulaanbaatar. Here we go to 55 to 60 miles per hour. The road was narrow, but there was a little traffic, and we arrived in Ulaanbaatar after 7.5 hours total. And so the missionaries traveling back and forth for zone conference, mission conference, and other things like that. But so it's not just difficult for the missionaries to travel that far. It was also the same for the members, right? When they had, for example, district conference and maybe later state conference, which we'll talk about the stakes later. But they had a great deal of sacrifice to be able to come to church.
Yes, and when we visited Mongolia, we met a brother. He was very faithful. He lived in Durham, but he would take the bus at least like 11, 12 hours each week to go to Ulaanbaatar for the stick centers, and to be there, just to be there, to be close to the saints as well.
Yeah, And so the church continued to flourish despite many of those challenges. We want to talk about the first missionaries from Mongolia.
After the Mongolian mission has been organized, there are two first missionaries went on a mission from Mongolia. The first one was Bachumak. She received her mission call in 1995. And her best friend, Soyoma, also received her call in 1995. Bachumak was introduced to the church by a friend in 1993 and was baptized on March 21st, 1994. And when she was in Russia, she found their sister missionary. She was so excited that she saw missionary because in the Mongolia, most of the missionary they were elders, and she didn't know that sister could serve a mission. And when she met the sister missionaries in Russia, she decided to serve a mission. On the pictures right there, it was when she received her mission call in 1995.
Yeah, she was just so excited because, in Mongolia, she had only met elders, young elder missionaries, and couple missionaries. But while studying at school in Russia, that's where she bumped into sister missionaries, which she has never thought about. She didn't think that sister missionaries would serve. And so she went back to Mongolia, so excited, told the mission president, I'm going on a mission. And the mission president had to kind of explain to her that, well, there's a process to go through, and you fill out an application, and the call comes from the prophet, and so forth. So she went through that process. And then when she received her mission call in 1995, she was just thrilled and excited.
She was called to serve in the Utah Salt Lake Temple Square mission in 1995. And she was the first Mongolian missionaries. And then this is her friend, Soyuma. Because of Bachumak, and she also, Soyuma joined the church. It was introduced by Bachumak. And she was baptized on June 11, 1994.
Yeah, Soyoma at first thought, when her friend Bachumak called her, said he should join the church, she thought, this is crazy. Let me go check it out and try to convince you to leave the church. And then Soyoma ends up being baptized, right?
Yes. And then when she was called to serve in the Utah Provo mission in 1995. But she was so surprised. Why did I receive a call in Provo?
Yeah, she was quite upset at the call, actually, and she went straight to the mission president and said, I can't serve in Utah. And the mission
Provo.
president said, and she said, I can't serve in Utah. I need to go somewhere else. And the mission president had to explain to her, well, this is not quite how the church works. You serve wherever the prophet calls you. And so after they discussed a little bit, the mission president asked her, why don't you want to serve in Utah? And her response was,
well, Utah have all the members. I don't need to preach the gospel to them. So
yeah, there are no non-members in Utah. That's what she thought. And so she decided, but then after talking to the mission president said, you just have to go where the prophet calls you. And she said, okay, I'll go. And then when she got to Utah, then she realized, one, it's really cold, but also she realized there are many people, they're not members of the church, that need the gospel. And she served faithfully and helped many people to come to learn about the restored gospel.
And then also later on, she served as a district young woman president. And also very important that she was the first woman to serve as a service center manager for the church in Mongolia.
Yeah, not just in Mongolia, but for the whole church. And then for some of you that are not aware, the church has a service center in many countries of the world. Okay, so here in Utah, we're used to seeing the large church office building on Temple Square where all the church employees serve. They work under the direction of the presiding bishopric. And so in the past, some of these centers were called the presiding bishopric's office. They're now called service center. And this is where all the employees of the church work to provide support for the ecclesiastical leaders. So the church will hire, for example, individuals to help with translation of church materials, somebody who will take care of facilities management, maybe somebody to manage welfare, self-reliance programs, humanitarian projects, communication, and so forth.
And church magazine as well.
Right, including the distribution center, ordering church materials, and so forth. And so Soyoma becomes, years after her mission, she'll become not just the first manager of a service center in Mongolia, but she will be the first woman to serve as a manager of a service center anywhere in the world for the church.
Yes. And then, as you can see, this is some status about the Mongolian missions, how you grow at the beginning. So sometimes you can see on the right side, so you'll go up and down. It depends on maybe how many missionary visa the government has issued out, or like any other things that maybe affect the missionary work there. But in the long run, you can see on the left is still increasing positively the number of the Mongolian sings.
Yeah, so the church membership had gradually increased over the last 25, 30 years in Mongolia, right? Beginning with the first missionaries. Now we have over 12,000 members of the church in Mongolia. And as my wife mentioned, the graph on the right here shows the number of baptisms by year. And sometimes that was related to the number of missionary visas that were permitted.
And then you can see that 2020, probably because of pandemic,
the COVID,
the
right?
COVID, and then the number has dropped.
Yeah, so during COVID, there were no, missionary work almost came to a halt. And now, as we pass COVID, then we're getting missionaries back into Mongolia. Then baptisms are starting to increase again.
Mm-hmm. And then when there are more and more members in the church, the one thing that is very important for the brethren is to have the seminary and institute program in a country.
Yeah, we often say that the church always sends the missionaries first, and right at the heels of the missionaries, the church educational system or the seminaries and institute programs of the church follow right behind.
Yeah, in the late 1990s, the church educational system in Mongolia began to establish. And at the beginning, the seminary program in Mongolia wasn't like the release time we talk about in Utah, but it's something more like at the beginning it's a weekday religious education. Sometimes they have the Sunday program, but later on it turned into the early morning seminary programs.
Yeah, they'll go through a transition of home study classes once a week and some lessons at home into a daily early morning program.
Yes, and President and Sister Cook worked to start their classes in 1995, but the first seminary institute classes began in 1996. At that time, about 18 students meeting during their lunchtime. They met together and learned about the gospel. And
then by 1999, then there are 86 seminary students and 100 institute students that are enrolled in the country.
And then the first brother that was hired to be a full-time employee of the church educational system is Brother Gang. He served in Russia and then developed a good relationship with the local leaders. And then he was hired to be the first CES coordinator and SNI employee in Mongolia in 1999. And you can see the pictures on the left. He was with his mother after he was hired.
Yeah, Brother Gang was single, but a returned missionary that had great faith and helped to start and coordinate some of the programs for the seminaries and institutes there. After he left, the second person hired was Purusharan Sharat. He goes by Puji, Brother Puji.
And he was hired like shortly after in 2001. Within 1 year of after his baptism, he graduated from Moscow University.
Yeah, so he was just a new convert, right? He's joined the church only for a year and was a branch president and then was invited to become the coordinator of all the volunteer teachers in the seminary institute programs of the church in Mongolia.
And then you can see the pictures on your right is he was with the area director at that time, Brother Kwok from Hong Kong.
Yeah, so on the right is Brother Puji. On the left is the area director for Asia, Brother Kwok. And so here you see on these pictures Brother Puji, who is with the mission president, missionary couples, and other seminaries and institute teachers.
Yes, and then you can see the on the right side some institute students taking picture with Brother Fuji, and you can see the smile on the face, and then you can see the light of the gospel on the face as well.
So Brother Ogro then becomes the third SNI coordinator in Mongolia. You can see a picture of him here in his office, picture to the left, and then the other picture is of a group of seminaries and institutes, a seminary class here in Choibosan. Now, about Brother Ogro. So he was hired as a SNI coordinator in 2006. He had previously had communist ideologies until he was introduced to the gospel by his mother. And his mother would take him to church, and then one of the things that happened was that he felt when he was at church, he saw a grown man sharing his testimony and crying, and he thought that was so strange because in his culture, a grown man wouldn't cry in public. But that really touched his heart, and then brought him to the church. And then after he was hired, then he was invited to become a SNI coordinator by the missionary couple that was teaching there. And he felt that he could not. He already had a job, and it wasn't something that was interested in. They had an opening, and the missionary couple was really trying to get him to do that. And he said, well, no, if I was to do it, I'd only could do it full time. And then he had just left to go into, his job was with the university, and he was working as an herbologist, and he would go around and plant trees, check on trees. So after he talked to the missionary, he just kind of left. And then the missionaries approached his wife, Sister Yuna, and then asked her about the possibility. And so she gave him his credentials, his diploma, other information, and then they sent it to Hong Kong. And by the time Brother Ogro had come back, he was getting a call for an interview with the a member of the Asia Area Presidency, as well as an interview with the Seminaries Institute Area Director for Asia from Hong Kong. And so he felt really strange, and he thought, well, let me check with my wife what's going on. And so he asked her, hey, what's going on? How come they're contacting me about an interview and all of this? And then it turns out his wife's response, well, I thought you said that you would do it full time. And then he had to explain to his wife, no. I actually said if I was to do it, I would only do it full time. Anyway, he accepted the invitation, and he was taught, of course, by the missionaries that even though he's been planting trees, he's being hired now to plant gospel seeds and to help the young generations of youth and young single adults to be able to learn the gospel.
And he started the early morning seminary program there, and then he helped a lot of students, institute students, seminary students, and then he made a great impact for the seminary institute program in Mongolia.
But here's something about the Seminaries Institute. Here in Utah, we're used to Release Time Seminary, where the churches build a seminary building next to a high school, for example, and students get released from one period to walk across the parking lot or campus to attend seminary. In Mongolia, it's quite different, right? Mongolia is winter months. They have harsh winters, freezing cold, in the middle of the night, dark, and so forth. And so the area presidency really wanted early morning seminary to start in Mongolia. They were doing home study, right, which was they do some lessons at home, and then once a week, usually a Saturday, they'll meet together for a class. That was home study seminary. The area presidency wanted for them to do daily, Monday through Friday, early morning seminary before they go to school. So here's a story that comes from Brother Griffith, who shares this story. It said in November 2008, Brother Ogro and Brother Chuk, who is the area director from Hong Kong over Asia, had a meeting with the mission president while Brother Chuk was visiting Mongolia. The mission president, Alan Anderson, asked Brother Agro why early morning seminary classes weren't being held in Mongolia. Brother Agro replied, "President, this is Mongolia. Cold, dark, dog, no public transportation." A year later, the three of them met again. The mission president asked the same question. Brother Agro's response, again, cold, dark, dogs, no public transportation. After the meeting, Brother Chuk took Brother Agro aside and said, "Agro, when your priesthood leader asks you to do something, you need to work on it." In reply, Brother Agro said, "Patrick, you don't understand Mongolia. Mongolia dark, Mongolia cold, Mongolian dogs, and no public transportation." So ended the conversation there. However, after the meeting, Agro had an experience that really softened his heart. He was reading Doctrine and Covenants, section 85, verse 8, and his attention was drawn to the words, "steady the ark." He studied about it. He learned that President David McKay taught that those who studied the ark soon died spiritually. So, not wanting to lose the spirit, Brother Agro started early morning seminary programs. And by October, there were, of that year, 200 students were attending, and by March, 352 came, braving Mongolia's coldest winter in 30 years. Imagine that. They're going to start early morning seminary on the coldest winter Mongolia had in 30 years. And this is, just tells you about the story of faith. This is a story from one of the sisters that attended seminary. She said when they started seminary, seminary was held at 4 p.m. 4 days a week. And then when early morning seminary began in 2009, it was held at 6 a.m. 5 days a week. And in the middle of the winter in Mongolia, where they have very cold and harsh winters, the temperatures dropping to minus 40 Celsius, or which is minus 40 Fahrenheit. Nevertheless, the students loved early morning seminary because it taught them the importance of the gospel. And so many of them later served missions, attended the institute, married in the temple, and so forth. It was a great blessing to have early morning seminary in Mongolia.
And also in this graph, you can see that the seminary enrollment and institute enrollment in Mongolia. You can see it depends on the time. It goes up and down a little bit.
Yeah, and so there's some fluctuations there because there are periods of time when they did not have a full-time coordinator to help.
Yeah. And at the end, we are grateful for Brother Agro because we began collecting history in Mongolia because of Brother Agro.
That's right.
He helped us a lot, and then he asked us if we could help together and then to write about the history of Mongolia.
Yeah, so while I was working as a coordinator and country director for the church educational system with the seminaries and institutes in Taiwan, we've worked closely with Brother Agro because he was my counterpart in Mongolia. He found out that we've written a book on the Voice of the Saints in Taiwan, chronicling the history of the church in Taiwan, and he just said, "Well, when are you going to write one for Mongolia?"
Yes.
And so I said, "Come here to Mongolia and help us write this history."
We are grateful to have a chance to learn about the history in Mongolia, the church history in Mongolia, and get to know the things in Mongolia.
Yeah, and the stories that we share are references in our book, Voice of the Saints in Mongolia. But we're just so grateful for our both President Sister Cook and all those missionaries, for those wonderful sister missionaries, the first two, Bachimeng at Soyoma, for their sacrifice. Not just them, but all these other missionaries from Mongolia and those that came to Mongolia to serve, as well as all those seminaries and institute teachers, those volunteers that wake up early morning hours, parents that drive their children, children that walk or find their way to somebody's home or to the chapel to have early morning seminary. What a great story of faith they're founding here. I mean, I'm just so grateful for them.
And I'm grateful for this members' effort in preaching the gospel, because of the new convert decided to join the church, and then they want to introduce this wonderful gospel to their friends and families. And I'm one of the example. I was introduced to the gospel by my cousins, so that's why I became a member of the church.
Yeah, and we just bear witness that the Lord's hand is in this work, and His hand is being in Mongolia to help. Whenever you have a group of individuals who will exercise their faith and their childlike faith to follow the Lord and His prophets, He can work wonderful miracles. He can take ordinary people and give them the strength and the ability to accomplish extraordinary things. And we bear witness that this is the Lord's church, and share this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.